The Portland Trailblazers have some big decisions to make, but we already knew that, of course. Right now, they're in a bit of no man's land with conflicting timelines. They've got a superstar and franchise player in Damian Lillard, arguably the best player in that team's franchise history, but he'll be 33 years old by the time next season rolls around. They've got a starting center who most would agree is on a bad contract for his level of impact, and also a player that is about to be 30 in Jusuf Nurkic. They've got an unrestricted free agent who is also about to be 30 in Jeremy Grant, and then they've got a bunch of young guys with a lot of promise, most notably Anthony Simons, who has really broken out the last couple of seasons, only 24 years old, an all-star in the making with how much he's progressed, and then Shaedon Sharpe, their lottery pick from last year's draft, who had a very impressive run towards the end of the year when the Blazers called it quits for the season when they realized they weren't going to be making the playoffs. Only 20 years old, just turned 20 actually, and has a ton of promise. And for the Blazers, a team that hasn't been to the finals since 1992, hasn't won a championship since the 70s, a small market team that is desperate to put together a winning team around the greatest player in their franchise history. That desperation is likely going to set their franchise back for years to come. The next 2 weeks will be a make or break time in determining the trajectory of this franchise for the next decade, and I'll explain why. If you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, look, we all know Damian Lillard has been very clear ever since his end of season exit interview. He doesn't have an appetite for building and playing alongside young project players who are still years away from competing. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but in a nutshell, Dame wants to win now. He's not interested in who the Blazers are going to be taking with the number 3 pick. He said multiple times at this stage in his career, he wants to win. He wants to compete for a championship. And he's also said on numerous occasions that he wants to play out his career in Portland. It's his home now. It's where he's played his entire career, and he wants to win a championship for the city and its fans. And look, you have to applaud Dame for his loyalty. Being a superstar, playing in a small market, sticking through the good times and the bad, and despite never really having a true title contending team, like, let's be real, they really haven't, but he's played hard, never requested a trade, never shown any frustration with the organization, at least not publicly anyway, and in an era of the NBA where stars have become so entitled and will just force their way out of the organization or force them to do whatever they want and push their way out if they don't get their way, that's rare to see from a star player like Dame. Granted, the Blazers have been taking care of him by paying him handsomely and offering him extensions that were probably premature, so some could just say that Dame cared more about his bag than actually winning. But either way, it's rare to see a superstar talent remain with one team for over a decade when said team has never really produced at a high level. Most stars these days would push their way out. But for the Blazers, that loyalty, both for which Dame has shown to them and vice versa, is going to cost them greatly, because it's been made clear for weeks now the Blazers are looking to shop that number 3 pick as well as some of their younger players for an already established star or stars. They know they either need to move that pick as well as some of their other assets to keep Dame happy, otherwise he's going to demand a trade. Loyalty only goes so far when you're nearing retirement and you don't have a ring. But here's the thing, the Blazers, for the betterment of their future, just need to cut ties and move on from their franchise player. Not screwing him over, obviously, working with him in his camp to find the right destination that he wants to go to, thank him for his loyalty and play over the years, and head in a new direction. Because as good as Damian Lillard has been for the Blazers are not going to win a championship with Lillard. Not at this stage in his career. People don't like to admit this, but did you know that Lillard is number 10 in terms of the worst box plus minus in postseason in NBA history? Not just among active players, but in NBA history. Now, granted, some of that can be attributed to maybe not having the best roster around him throughout his career, and Dame has had some pretty historic playoff games with big-time shots, but it's pretty telling when your level of impact on the court, on the biggest stage, is that much of a negative. And here's the other thing, realistically, what star or stars could the Blazers bring in with the assets they have to trade that would instantly put them over the top in being a true title contender? That would make them more competitive than a team like the Denver Nuggets or the Phoenix Suns or even the Clippers and Lakers if they can stay healthy. Hell, even the Warriors or the up-and-coming Kings. The Western Conference is so stacked that it's hard to imagine a world where even if the Blazers did add win now talent, that it's going to put them over the top. And you have to look at star players that could actually be available for the right package. Look, guys like Giannis, Jokic, Tatum, Luka, Steph, Kevin Durant, even LeBron James, those guys are untouchable. They're not leaving their teams no matter the trade package. So you have to be looking at players that are maybe gettable in a trade. Guys like Jaylen Brown, Zach LaVine, potentially even DeMar DeRozan, Pascal Siakam, Julius Randle, maybe even Trae Young if the Hawks are unsure of his future with the team, even though that would be a terrible fit alongside Lillard. And when you look at the list of these players, and yes, there are some others that I didn't mention, would adding any of those stars put the Blazers over the top in the Western Conference with an aging Damian Lillard? I don't think we could say with confidence that that would be the case. And sure, they could trade for one of these established stars and also add some strong role players to complement these additions. But again, your timeline, your window to win is going to be so narrow with Damian Lillard that you have to take a step back and ask yourself, is it worth it? There have been reports that in addition to shipping out the number 3 pick in this year's draft, that the Blazers could be looking to also include Shaedon Sharpe. And while most would agree that Anthony Simons is untouchable, there is a world where he would potentially need to be included in a package to net them a high-level all-star or as an additional piece to round out this win-now roster that they're trying to develop. And look, if you trade the number 3 pick, Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons in the same offseason to get Dame that win-now talent, that would be gross malpractice on the part of the front office. I don't think they would do it, let me be clear on that, but there is speculation in the media that these guys would be available for the right haul to put together a contender around Dame. You talk about mortgaging your future, you're giving up the next decade of your franchise's future, especially with that number 3 pick having franchise player potential, all to have a small window, maybe 2 to 3 seasons at best, to win a title with Damian Lillard. And this is what I don't get. The Blazers have done good by Dame. They paid him well, kept him happy, had some competitive teams here and there. At some point, you have to take a step back and realize the position you're in and say it's time to move on, because the Blazers are actually already well positioned for the future. I would get it if they didn't have much to work with in building for the long term, and all they had was their superstar player to cling to for the final years of his career. But no, the Blazers have what most would consider an up-and-coming all-star in Anthony Simons, who just turned 24. They have him under contract for the next 3 seasons, is turning into an elite-level scorer, one of the better three-point shooters in the league on high volume, as well as improving his overall efficiency and finishing at the rim. You have one of the youngest rookies from the previous class who just turned 20 and was looking like a star in the making, putting up insane numbers towards the end of the season. A lot of potential, a lot of time to develop, having not even come close to entering his prime. And more importantly, you have a top 3 pick in a stacked draft class and a shot at drafting a potential franchise player in Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller. I personally think Scoot has more potential and would be a great point guard replacement for Dame for the future, but either player is going to be great. So you would already have that solid foundation to build upon for years to come. And we haven't even mentioned it yet, also the kind of haul you would be able to get for Lillard. Damian Lillard is a superstar in this league, and there are a lot of contending teams that would be vying for him if he's made available in a trade. And there are teams that would actually have the assets to make it too tempting for the Blazers to pass up on. Let's not forget the kind of package teams were throwing out for guys like Rudy Gobert and DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell. Multiple unprotected first-round picks as well as young players. And while, yes, I think we can all agree most of those trades were massive overpays for fringe all-stars, this is Damian Lillard we're talking about here. Not a fringe all-star. A top 10 player in the league when healthy, and teams are going to be willing to give up a lot to have that on their roster. Kevin Durant netted 4 first-round picks and 2 young players from the Suns. And maybe Dame isn't quite on the level of Kevin Durant. He's close to it, though. And to think that the Blazers at a minimum could be looking at netting 3 first-round picks and a young player or 2. A team like the Knicks would have the assets and salary filler to do so, even though I wouldn't consider the Knicks to be a title contending team. But hey, they have a lot of draft picks and players they could use as salary dump. The Miami Heat, they just went to the NBA Finals. A player like Dame could put them over the top in the East. They have the draft capital and players that they could move to make the salaries work in Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. The Sixers, yeah, they could get into the mix. The Celtics, they need a point guard, and I'm sure they would be willing to sacrifice one of their younger players in Jaylen Brown. The point is, the opportunities are sky high if the Blazers trade Damian Lillard. Not only would they already have the building blocks they currently have with the number 3 pick, Simons and Sharpe, but adding multiple first-round picks for the future and young players to keep building on that foundation is franchise-altering. You're talking about a stacked title-contending team 5 to 7 years from now, compared to a team that has little future and draft capital to work with for their franchise player now retired 5 to 7 years from now if they go the route to try for one last all-in push to win with Dame. I get it. It's hard to let go of a player who has been part of your franchise since you drafted him back in 2012 and has kept your franchise relevant for all those years. But there comes a time where you have to go in another direction, even if it means being bad for a while. And for the Blazers, That time is now. And the time is now because Lillard's trade value likely is only going to get lower with time. This is their chance to change the trajectory of their franchise. Will they do it though? I don't think they will, and it will be a massive, massive mistake that will set them back for years. Let me know what you guys think though. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.